Kia ora e te whānau ai te karaiti. Welcome to Good Friday at St Matthew in the City in Auckland, Aotearoa, New Zealand. Normally on Good Friday we would gather in the church around our labyrinth, a stone labyrinth laid out on the church's floor, which we would walk all of Holy Week. The building would have been quiet all week. Unlike our normal busy events and weddings and concerts, it would have been really quiet as people walked the labyrinth. And then we gather seated around it, ready to contemplate on Good Friday. And we always begin with our deacon, Reverend Wilf Holt, carrying the wooden cross across the labyrinth while a cello player plays. So watch now some still photos accompanied by the cello playing of Tom Pierard.
Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas the high priest in whose house the scribes and the elders had gathered. But Peter was following him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and going inside, he sat with the guards in order to see how this would end. Now the chief priests and the whole council were looking for false testimony against Jesus, so that they might put him to death, but they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last 2 came forward and said, "This fellow said, 'I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days.'" The high priest stood up and said, "Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?" But Jesus was silent. Then the high priest said to him, "I put you under oath before the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Jesus said to him, "You have said so. But I tell you, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has blasphemed. Why do we still need witnesses? You have now heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict?" They answered, "He deserves death." Then they spat in his face and struck him, and some slapped him, saying, "Prophesy to us, you Messiah. Who is it that struck you?" Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. A servant girl came to him and said, "You were also with Jesus the Galilean." But he denied it before all of them, saying, "I do not know what you are talking about." When he went out to the porch, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." Again he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." After a little while the bystanders came up and said to Peter, "Certainly you are one of them, for your accent betrays you." Then he began to curse, and he swore an oath, "I do not know the man." At that moment the cock crowed. Then Peter remembered what Jesus had said, "Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly.
When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people conferred together against Jesus, in order to bring about his death. They bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate the governor. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "You say so." But when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he did not answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many accusations they make against you?" But he gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Now, at the festival, the governor was accustomed to release a prisoner for the crowd, anyone whom they wanted. At that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Jesus Barabbas. So after they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you, Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" For he realized that it was out of jealousy that they had handed him over. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with that innocent man, for today I had suffered a great deal because of a dream about him." Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus killed. Then again the governor said to them, "Which of the 2 do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what should I do with Jesus who is called the Messiah?" All of them said, "Let him be crucified." Then he asked, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified." So when Pilate saw that he could do nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, He took some water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves." Then the people as a whole answered, "His blood be on us and on our children." So he released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified.
Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole cohort around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on his head. They put a reed in his right hand and knelt before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. After mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. As they went out, they came upon a man from Cyrene named Simon. They compelled this man to carry his cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink, mixed with gall, but when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes among themselves by casting lots. Then they sat down there and kept watch over him. Over his head they put the charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then 2 bandits were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads, saying, "You who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests also, along with the scribes and elders, were mocking him, saying, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross now, and we will believe him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now if he wants to, for he said, 'I am God's son.'" The bandits who were crucified with him also taunted him in the same way.
From noon on, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. And about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried with a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani." That is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, "This man is calling for Elijah." At once one of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink. But others said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him." Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs were also opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After his resurrection, they came out of the tombs and entered the holy city and appeared to many. Now, when the centurion and those around him, who were keeping watch over Jesus, saw the earthquake and what took place, they were terrified and said, "Truly, this man was God's son." Many women were also there, looking on from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee and had provided for him. Among them were Mary Magdalene, and Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee.
When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it to be given to him. So Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn in the rock. He then rolled a great stone to the door of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there, sitting opposite the tomb. The next day, that is, after the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, "Sir, we remember what that impostor said while he was still alive. After 3 days I will rise again. Therefore, command that the tomb be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise his disciples may go and steal him away and tell the people he has been raised from the dead, and the last deception would be worse than the first." Pilate said to them, "You have a guard of soldiers. Go, make it as secure as you can." So they went with the guard and made the tomb secure by sealing the stone.
At about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried with a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Even Jesus felt forsaken and completely abandoned and alone. People passed by the cross and scoffed, "If you're the Son of God, why don't you just come down?" On the first Sunday of Lent, which really seems a lifetime ago, we read the temptations of Jesus in the wilderness. And I reflected then, the temptations are all things that we want Jesus and God to be or do. We want to be able to pray that God will magic away all our problems. Stop COVID-19, stop the bushfires, stop war, stop people from dying. And on Good Friday, we also want Jesus to come down from the cross. We want his suffering to stop. We want our suffering to stop. Wouldn't it just be better if God sent some angels and rescued him? Like the eagles from Lord of the Rings, they could just swoop down and get him down from that cross. But God does not do that. God hears the cry, "Why have you abandoned me?" And God waits. So what are we supposed to do with that? We can say with Jesus the words of Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from my help and from my cry of distress?" We can say those words with him, and we can sit today with the suffering of our world, the fear, the anxiety, the sorrow, and the death. And not just the suffering of COVID-19 that fills our screens every day and every hour, but other things that are still happening, violence and poverty and racism, the effects of climate change, hatred and war. They're all still going on as well. And we sit with these things today more than any other day. Jesus on the cross asks us to look at that suffering head on, to be in that moment of feeling forsaken and abandoned. It's a really hard place to be. Yet unlike Jesus and the crowd on that first Good Friday, we know what is coming. We know that at first light, on the third day, the tomb will be empty. But we can't skip straight to that part of the story. Today, we have to stay with the cross. Psalm 22 goes on to say, "You are the Holy One, enthroned on the praises of your people. Our ancestors trusted in you. They trusted, and you delivered them." We sit with the cross today knowing that the promises of old, that God is always with the people, even when God is silent. Debbie Thomas says, "There is no death we will die, small or big, literal or figurative, that Jesus will not hold in his crucified arms." Have the courage to rest in the silence of those arms today. We thank you, O God, for your company in the deathly graves of our life, the vivid courage of your journey down into all our realities, the bleeding of your life which mingles with the bleeding of our life, and the echoing down the centuries of this love beyond all other love. Gather all of our prayers into the loving, healing, and costly carrying of pain which lies within your own body, Jesus Christ. We thank you, O God, for the saving power which lies within your greatest vulnerability, and which is offered to us if we will stay in this moment and wait for truth and grace. In the silence, we honour all that you have done for us and for all people. Give us faith, O God. Give us faith to believe in a love as great as yours, Jesus Christ. Wrap our lives in the cherishing shroud of your grace. Amen.